Hi, folks. I'm doing something a little different here, just to try to experiment a little bit. This is going to be something that's kind of completely off the cuff, so apologize if I stumble a lot. I don't know what to say. I'm doing this on the fly, and also if my lighting or my audio isn't that great, but I wanted to try something just to test it out. I'm going to be counting down my top 10 favorite movies of 2022, of the entire year. Here. Now, keep in mind, I have not seen a lot. I haven't seen every single film of the year, so some stuff I've heard amazing things about, like, say, Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Whale, Prey, or stuff like that. I've not seen them, so and my taste in movies is very slim sometimes. So this is just my personal favorite films of the year, live action and animated. Keep that in mind. But before I get into that, I have a couple of honorable mentions. My honorable mentions are Turning Red, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, Black Adam, Wendell and Wild, Disenchanted, and just barely making it out of the top 10, Avatar, The Way of Water. Alright? So, we'll start things off with number 10, A Christmas Story, Christmas. Now, like most of you folks, I love the original Christmas Story. I feel like it's a classic in its own right? And probably one of the most memorable quotes in any Christmas movie to this day. Ever since then, they've tried to do a bunch of sequels, like just one's focusing just the family itself, and they even tried to do Christmas Story 2, none of which worked. So I was a little skeptical about this movie in particular to see, even if they got some of the actors to come back, but I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a good follow-up to the original film. It felt very sweet in nature. It did try to retread like a couple of things at times. I did think it's a little weird that Ralphie still has his daydreams even as an adult, but they were pretty funny. There's a couple of callbacks, but not to the point where it's so distracting. It's nice seeing a lot of the actors that play the kids come back, and it did have a lot of heart to it, especially because they focus a lot on Ralphie's father and like what he meant to what he thought about Christmas and what he meant to them as well. And I really liked that. There's a lot of there's funny moments, and it just is nice. It hit me in the Christmas feels. I really enjoyed it. Then we have number 9, Scream, 2022. Now, just so you know, I am not a huge horror fan. There's a few horror films that I like, but that's not my favorite genre. It's not one that I would watch on my own a lot. However, I watched the entire Scream franchise for the first time this year to prepare for this one. And those films I actually wouldn't have an exception because I thoroughly enjoyed all of them. Even the ones I thought would be weaker, like the third or the fourth one, I still really enjoyed. Maybe there's all of them I felt like were pretty equal in my mind. So after watching all those, I was pretty excited to see what the fifth movie would bring. And I enjoyed it just like the first four, my bad. But this one actually, like what Scream usually does is it's on top of being a slasher mystery film, it also has a bunch of meta commentary on horror films in general. Like the first film had all these horror cliches they would mention and what should be done. The second film was about like sequels, like what's good or what's bad sequel. This one focuses a lot more on like the meta commentary is like the reboot sequels, stuff like say Star Wars sequels or Creed or Ghostbusters Afterlife or something like that, where their follow-ups to the original films are also trying to reboot it at the same time. But I thought it was done pretty well. Some of it's a little on the nose, especially what the killer's motivation is. It's kind of, if you're a fan of a certain franchise, it's kind of like, yeah, I know what they're talking about. Oh, but I still really enjoyed it. I like seeing the characters like Dewey or Gale or Cindy again, and it's a shame that Neve Campbell is not going to be returning for the sixth film because she was been the franchise since the beginning. But there's nothing we can do. But I'm still looking forward to the sixth movie, and I'm curious where her head, especially since Jenna Ortega has now hit a big boosting popularity because of Wednesday. Still haven't seen it, by the way, so still need to work on that. So yeah, number 9, Scream. Number 8, the highest grossing film of 2022, and probably should be higher on most people's list, Top Gun Maverick. Now, when it comes to the original Top Gun, I like the first Top Gun fine, but it's one for me that I'm not a huge fan of. There's a lot of iconic moments in it, and it's a good movie in its own right. It's just not one that I'm a huge, diehard, passionate fan of. It's a little more too much 80s cheese for me. But so in my mind, I actually like Top Gun Maverick just a little bit more than the first film. Tom Cruise, it just proves how much of a crazy madman he is, because all the plane shots in this movie and all the action scenes are amazing. They're shot great, they're actually done live, and it's really impressive. It looks great on the big screen, and you feel like you're there. It's really amazing. Like Tom Cruise has more balls than anyone probably in this world would ever have to do that. But I like the story they gave Maverick. I liked him. He's still reckless in all these years, so he hasn't learned that much. But I like him being like a teacher to the Top Gun pilots here, and I like he forms a connection with Goose's son, and I thought that was really done well. Like the acting is great, and like it felt like this movie was actually trying to be an authentic Top Gun sequel. Like I like seeing Maverick in this next stage of his life. One of my favorite scenes in this movie is when he meets up with Iceman again, and I thought that was a really emotional, well done scene, and then I like seeing Val Kilmer for the few little bit that he's on. So probably because why it's not higher on my list is because one, I don't really have too much of a personal connection to the original Top Gun, and two, it's like for me sometimes I don't understand a lot of stuff that's going on for really complex films. Like I don't understand a lot of aircraft or pilot talk that they do, so I'm just like, it's hard for me to really get interested or understand it, but that's just a me thing. It's still an enjoyable time, and it still was a worthy sequel to the original film. Number 7 for me is Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Yes, I put a Sonic movie above Top Gun. Sue me. But anyway, this film for me, again, I watched the first film this year, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed it more than I thought, especially after the first trailer was a complete disaster. Don't worry, he made a comeback in Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. Let's not forget that. But anyway, I enjoyed the first film fine, but I feel like it felt a little restrained to be a Sonic movie. Like, it was fun, but it did feel more like a entertaining family film with a Sonic film. Sonic the Hedgehog 2, on the other hand, felt more like a Sonic film. When I watched this in theaters, I had a blast just watching it. I thought it was so fun. Like, it felt more to me like a video game movie than the first film did. The only thing dragging this movie down is the human characters, because it gets to a point where the Sonic gang kind of disappears from the movie for a bit, and it kind of focuses on them. And it's kind of funny in the moment, but it's not one that really anyone cares about. It's just like, whatever. But that's why they kind of set them off. But everything else, all the Sonic stuff is great. I thought Sonic was still fun like he is in the first movie. I thought he had a good arc that he had in this movie. Tails was a good addition. And I thought he was a good ally to Sonic, and he's very cute. I like their relationship. Knuckles is awesome. I thought he's the best character in the movie. Like every time him and Sonic go at it, it's amazing. And I love Idris Elba's voice that he gives Knuckles. And I just loved every scene he was on screen. Same goes with Jim Carrey as Robotnik. Oh, like if you thought he chewed up the scenery in the first movie, he just devours every scenery that he's on. He's so funny in this. And this is his last film that he does, because Jim Carrey has said he wants to retire. Then I salute him, because he gave a major final performance. But let's see how the paychecks are. Maybe we'll be back for the third movie. So it might be a crime to put Sonic above Top Gun, but in terms of my pure enjoyment, I just thought I just enjoyed Sonic a little bit more. One second. Okay. Number 6, The Batman. After multiple tries to reboot the franchise after the Dark Knight trilogy, like the Ben Affleck and the DCEU, which is not doing its best right now, Matt Reeves, one of my personal favorite directors, by the way, came in to bring Batman back to his roots and become a full-on detective film, and which is a good change, because Batman's supposed to be the world's greatest detective, and yet a lot of his movies, and except for the animated series, like Batman doesn't really do much detecting, but I thought this film was actually, it's not a mystery because we know who the villain is right off the bat, it's actually good just like Batman and the police like going through and trying to figure out like what the criminal wants to do, why is he doing all this. And I'm one of the people who doubted Robert Pattinson when he got cast because all I could see is just Twilight, but I'm one to admit that even he did a really good job in this movie. I thought he captured the essence of who Batman is. I don't know if he captured Bruce Wayne so much because Bruce Wayne's not really that much of a focus in this, but I feel like if they do sequels, I feel like he'll be expanded on a lot more as Bruce Wayne himself. A lot of the cast is really good. Zoe Kravitz makes a really good Catwoman. Colin Farrell is completely unrecognizable as the Penguin. I thought he was a ton of fun in this movie. Jeffrey Wright, Commissioner Gordon, and Andy Serkis, well, again, one of my faves, is Alfred. I thought they were pretty good. And then the Riddler, they actually made the Riddler a lot more terrifying than he normally is. It's a little weird because doesn't feel like the Riddler, like especially in design and what he does. He like lays riddles out, but doesn't feel like the comic book character. But I feel like that's a different take. I thought it was a good take, and I thought it was really effective. And yeah, he was pretty creepy throughout most of his performance, both in the mask or out of the mask. I thought Paul Dano, is that his name? I thought he did a good job. The action's pretty good in this movie. I feel like it's probably one of the most brutal Batman that we've ever gotten. It did feel a little too long, and I feel like the movie kind of like just peaked a bit, like when the Riddler was already captured, and then we had just like another climax going, and it's kind of just like, I don't know if we needed that. Plus, there's a character that shows up near the end of the movie that, again, I was just like, I don't know if we needed that character. But with that said, I still think it's a really good Batman movie. It's not my personal favorite Batman film. That'd probably still be The Dark Knight or Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Rest in peace, Kevin Conroy. But I still think it's probably the best DC movie we've gotten in a while. And when DC's kind of a bit of a rut right now, so they kind of need something to grapple onto. Anyway, number 5, the most recent film I have seen this year, Violent Night. When I saw the trailer, I actually was really curious. I was like, what are they going to do to make this work? Or David Harbour as Santa Claus just beating up criminals. That actually looks like fun. And I had a lot of fun with it. Like, keep in mind, when I was in the theater, I was the only one in the theater. So I actually got to just commentate on whatever I wanted. And I had a blast in this movie. David Harbour as Santa in this movie is just perfect. He captures the right essence of just hard-boiled and also just frustrated with everything that's happened. And also, the one thing I like is that whenever the criminals burst into his house, he's legit scared. Like, he doesn't want to do this, but he is scared to take them on, and I thought that gives Santa a lot more vulnerability. But the family that the house broken into are not really that many great people. But Santa because one of the things I like about this movie is the relationship between Santa and this little girl that's in the house as well. It feels like it harkens back to John McClane and Officer Powell from Die Hard. Because when they're talking on the walkie-talkies and they don't see each other. So it harkened a lot back to that. The movie itself is pretty much Die Hard, except a full-on Christmas movie, and also a little bit of Home Alone. There's a little bit of Home Alone in there. More violent Home Alone than you would think. So I thought it was really good. John Leguizamo played the villain in this movie. I thought he did a pretty good job as the villain. Like, he made him very vile and made him person you want to hate. Plus how he eventually went out of the movie. It was perfect. I loved it. So, I thought I had a lot of fun. And this movie actually did have a lot of heart to it. Again, a lot of it ties back to the little girl in this movie. I thought it was actually, a lot more feelings than I thought it would be with this premise that she would give. Will there be a sequel or a prequel to this movie? I don't know. But I'd be interested in seeing it. I like seeing David Harbour, in anything, pretty much. So, one of the surprises for me of this year is Violent Night. Now, the top 4 for me were really hard for me to narrow down, because I love about most of these films pretty equally in my mind. So it was really hard for me to be which one do I decide over the others. But this is the order I went with. So number 4 for me is the best Pinocchio movie of this year, though it's not really saying much. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Now, obviously, it's weird that we have three Pinocchio movies of this year, and then the other two before this one, Pinocchio True Story and the Disney remake, were not really good. Let's just put it that way. But the master himself, Guillermo del Toro, comes in and says, "Hey, I know how to make Pinocchio movie. This is how it is." And it was a beautiful film indeed. Stop motion in this film is gorgeous. Like, it looks amazing. Like, it's so, like, the craft it took to make all this is wonderful. This is not like a normal Pinocchio movie that most adaptations do. It takes itself a lot more seriously, and it focuses a lot more on, like, there's a concept in this movie where Pinocchio is, like, deals with, like, his mortality, like, what, like how long does he live, or like what does it mean for him after death, stuff like that. And, like, it's actually really done well. A lot of the characters in this are a lot more complex than normal adaptation, like Geppetto, for example. In the beginning of this movie, you know right off the bat why he is the way he is throughout most of this movie, and you really feel for him, even though sometimes he can act a little out of turn, shall we say. But I thought it was really done well. A lot, like, also it's a lot more harsh because this takes place during World War One, and so there's a lot more harsh realities that this goes through, clearly in the beginning of this movie, and there's a lot of emotional stuff in this movie. It is not like a happy kids movie. And I really like the balls that Del Toro had to do this. The only problem I'd have with this movie is I feel like I didn't know going in that this was a musical, and so there's a couple songs in this movie, and it just kind of caught me off guard. And honestly, when at the end of the day, I was kind of thinking, like, why did this even need to be a musical? You could have just, like, the songs themselves are not that bad. It's just they're not too memorable for me. And I feel like if you cut them from the movie, I feel like nothing would change all that much. But that's a minor thing. I still think it's a really well done film and one of the best animated films of this year. Excuse me a sec. Anyway, number 3. I would probably declare this the funniest animated film of the year. Weird. The Al Yankovic story. Now, just so you know, when it comes to Weird Al Yankovic, I'm ashamed that I don't know a whole lot about his, like, song history and stuff like that. Not saying I don't like the guy. I do. Like, I think he's a very fun individual, and I listened to a couple of his songs this year in particular. I think they're a lot of fun. And I watched Milo Murphy's Law, and I enjoyed him in that. But, like, I'm not like a diehard Weird Al fan, and to my ever-loving shame, I know I should do that. With that said, on its own, Weird is actually a really fun movie. Like, it takes the concept of a biopic picture, which a lot of people have grown tired of over the years, and really, like, plays around with it and makes it like an absurdist comedy, like a Weird Al Yankovic movie, much like, say, UHF was. Daniel Radcliffe as Weird Al, I thought was an odd choice at first, but given Weird Al's nature, that kind of makes sense, and I thought he did great in this movie. I thought he really captured Weird Al, like, you know, or at least the parody version of Weird Al. And a lot of the actors in it, like Evan Rachel Wood, plays Madonna in this, and I'm like a very different kind of Madonna, and I thought it was really funny. A lot of great cameos in this movie. Like, I don't want to spoil, but they're a lot of fun. And like for those of you who might think that this movie is just a biopic of who Weird Al Yankovic was, it gets to a point for me in this movie where I'm just like, I'm pretty sure that didn't happen. And like, there's several moments where I just lost my mind and I just died of laughter. I'm just thinking about it right now. I'm sorry. But if you're a Weird Al Yankovic fan, you'll love this movie. Even if you're not, I feel like you should at least check it out. It might not be for everyone because it does go a little weird in the comedy department, and it gets a little bizarre at points. But I feel like if you just like to laugh, you just like watch a funny movie, you feel like Weird to be a good movie for you. So, number 3. Number 2, in my opinion, the best comic book movie of this year, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Now, obviously, like, Phase 4 in the MCU has not been getting the best, like, track record, and I'm kind of, like, 50-50 on it. Some things I love, some things I don't. But this is one of those cases where I feel like it ended very strongly, if we discount the Guardians Holiday Special, but I like that one, too. Excuse me. Obviously, obviously this film was dealt a very bad hand when the lead actor Chadwick Boseman passed away before this movie started production. So it was already given a bad hand already, just like what to do without our leading star. But Ryan Coogler, I feel like, excuse me again, Ryan Coogler made the right decision, and he carried on without him, and I feel like he crafted a very good story. A lot of the people I've heard were not some people weren't satisfied with who Black Panther ended up being, but I thought as the story went on, I feel like it was the most logical choice, and I feel like it made the most sense. Even when Chadwick died, I feel like this is probably who Black Panther is going to be, and I thought it was done really well. This movie's a lot more emotional than what most MCU movies have been, at least this phase. Most of the actors knock it out of the park. Angela Bassett, I'm sure you've heard everyone praise her, and I feel like she probably should deserve an Oscar. I like most of these characters I still love that were in the first film, like Okoye or M'Baku. M'Baku's a lot of fun, and I enjoy it. And I gotta give it up to Letitia Wright, who plays Shuri in this. I feel like she really stepped up her game in this movie and gave a pretty powerhouse performance, at least in my mind. And also the villain, Namor. I don't know a lot about Namor in the comics, but I thought, and I was worried how's this guy gonna stick up to Killmonger in the first film? And I thought I forget the actor's name right now, but I feel like he did a really good job, and I thought Namor to be a lot more compelling villain than I thought. I don't know if he's as resonant to me as Killmonger was, but I feel like he was a pretty effective villain. He was intimidating while also being charming at the same time. The actor really gives a lot of presence to Namor himself. A lot of the action scenes were done better here than they were in the first movie. There's a couple things in here I don't think were needed. Martin Freeman and his arc in this, I feel like could have been cut completely. And while I enjoyed the introduction to Riri Williams, Ironheart, in this movie, I don't feel like and they give a reason for her to be here, but I feel like for the overall story, I don't know if she needed to be here. But in terms of my emotional resonance, how much I felt to watch this movie, I feel like this is higher than most of the others, at least just for personal reasons. By the end of this movie, I did become a bit of a bit of an emotional wreck. Yeah, you can complain all you want. But anyway, while I'm going to be a huge fan of Phase 4, I feel like it really ended strongly with Wakanda Forever. Excuse me a sec. Excuse me. Now, number 1. What is my favorite film of 2022? Well, this is one for me that I would not have expected to put in my number 1. And the reason I probably put it here is because it caught me off guard. I saw the trailer and I'm just like, that might be fun. Maybe not anything great or something like that. And for me, it is probably the biggest surprise of the year at how good this movie actually was and how much fun I had watching this movie. And that film, for me, is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I cannot stress how much I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and I was shocked at how much I did. Because I like the Shrek franchise and all. The first 2 movies are classics for me, and I feel like the 4th movie is underrated in my mind. And I like the first Puss in Boots movie. I feel like it's a pretty good adventure movie, but I feel like it does take itself a little too seriously for a Shrek film. I mean, there's nothing wrong with playing it straight. I just feel like if it's gonna be set in the Shrek franchise, it should be more of a parody, but it's still made for a good enough adventure film, and I like seeing Puss in it. They do have a lot of interesting fairy tale concepts in this, but this movie just took what that had and just went beyond with it. First off, with the animation, obviously, it looks amazing. Obviously, it's inspired by Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but I feel, obviously, this is the best the Shrek franchise has ever looked. A lot of the action scenes in this movie are really cool. They're really awesome, much like Into the Spider-Verse. And, a lot of this movie is really funny. I laughed a lot. It's a lot more dark than, what normal, modern DreamWorks do. This feels more like a classic DreamWorks film, say a Road to El Dorado or the first original Shrek, for that matter. And I thought a lot of the jokes were really funny, and it caught me off guard a lot. I like a lot of the characters in this movie. I like they give Puss like a great character arc in this movie, and it makes Puss a lot more vulnerable than he's ever been in any of the other Shrek films or the first film. And I really like that. He seems a lot more cocky in this film, but I feel like that plays well to the story. They gave Kitty Softpaws, who was from the first movie, like a lot more dimension as well of her having like trust issues. Something that Ryan the Last Dragon, for example, tackles, but I feel like this film doesn't beat it over the head with it as much. There's a little dog in this movie like that accompanies them, and I thought he was gonna get annoying, but no, I actually really thought he was very charming. And a lot of the villains in this movie actually were pretty like interesting as well. You have Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I feel like they made a good like group, and they had a good dynamic, and I really liked the story that went with them. I thought it was actually very emotional in the end. Big Jack Horner was a lot of fun. Is John Mulaney playing him, so he plays it up to the hill. He has all these cool fairy tale weapons that he has, and it gets pretty dark with him, I'll say. And then you have I won't say much about this character, but you have this wolf in this movie who is probably the most terrifying DreamWorks antagonist since Kung Fu Panda 2. Probably. I feel every time he was on screen, I was legit like tense. I was really terrifying, especially for kids. If you take your kids to see it, just be careful. They might poop the pants a bit. So while maybe like there are films that are better than this film, or like ones I haven't seen that are better, in my mind, nothing like surprised me or I enjoyed more this year than Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. And that is my number one favorite movie of 2022. Be sure to leave in the comments like what your favorite movie of 2022 is, or even what your least favorites are. Just comment down below and let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you another time.